Hi guys, welcome to Foodie Book Club. This month I thought I would include some other non-fiction favourites that I have because I've been watching a lot of booktube videos and November is non-fiction month. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with booktube in general. I find a lot of it focuses a lot on young adult books and I generally tend to prefer non-fiction, so this month seemed perfect for me to dive in and share some of my reads from that as well. But if you do know any booktubers who read mostly non-fiction, definitely leave me your recommendations below. So the first book that I was going to read was The Urban Farmer by Curtis Stone, and I mentioned this in last month's video. I absolutely loved it. Curtis Stone is a YouTuber too, and he has a channel all about his urban farm, and he rents plots of land from other people who live in the city and grows vegetables there, which he then sells predominantly to restaurants, and he makes a living doing that. Usually you think of a farm being in the countryside, but he is right in the middle of the city, so he is able to sell that produce to the restaurants, which are also nearby. So there's a very small carbon footprint there. And this book is kind of his story about how he set up his urban farm, how he selects people's properties, how he gets water to them, how he looks after them. It's basically a manual, so you could follow this and do it yourself. And I actually started highlighting the sections of it because I was reading it like a textbook. I was so blown away by, like, hey, maybe I could do this too. It's probably not something that I would actually want to do, but his enthusiasm is really infectious, and you'll probably know that as well if you've seen any of his videos. So as well as being his story, it really is a guide to getting started yourself and setting up an urban farm. So I really enjoyed that one. And I read another foodie themed book. Actually, I listened to it on Audible, and it was The Olive Farm by Carol Drinkwater. Now, she came to fame in, I think it's All Creatures Great and Small, which was a TV show, 70s, 80s. I didn't know her as an actress from that, but I really like the types of stories about people setting up farms or moving away, and she buys an olive farm in France, and it's really a really exciting story. It's her journey of doing up this derelict farm, which she does with her partner, and she's only been together with him for 4 months when they buy the property, so it's a really young relationship, and she's kind of a little bit uncertain of whether it's the right thing to do to commit to this ramshackle property that they do up. And it's a lovely story, and it's actually part of a series, so there's another 5 books, I think. I'm really looking forward to getting on to the rest of them. As I said, I listened to it on Audible, and I think that was good for me, definitely because she reads it herself, so you can hear it in her voice and she's telling it. And I think autobiographical things work really well if they're narrated by the person that's written them. But also the way she writes, it's almost like poetry. There's lots of very long strings of verbs in it, and I think if I was reading it myself in my head, I would probably have stumbled over them a lot. But when you hear it in her voice, it really flows. So I can see on the page it might look a bit clunky, but it's almost poetic. It's a really, really nice read, and just so peaceful and relaxing, and listen to her stories. She's also a writer and writes TV shows, and she's based at this little house on the olive farm. Talks about how they got the money together to buy it, and lots of the problems that they have in the area, and trusting people to help them. It's a really nice read. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And my next book was Sous Chef 24 Hours on the Line, or Sous Chef 24 Hours in the Kitchen, which was what the Kindle edition that I read was called. They're the same book, so it might be that they had one title for North America, maybe one for the UK, I'm not sure. But it was such a quick read. I plowed through it in 2 days, which is very quickly, a short amount of time, a quick read for me. And it's a story of the chef. He's the sous chef, and it's just 24 hours. It starts very early in the morning when he starts his shift, doing all the prep for the kitchen. It's got really nice detailed descriptions of food, and which I really like. And then it goes through the day, so setting up the preparation, setting up for service, going through service, and then the close down at the end of the day. And that's a whole book, just that 24 hours. It's really detailed. It introduces you to the other people in the kitchen, but it's mostly focused on him as sous chef, on what he is doing. The menus in it are amazing. The only slight problem I had with it, it's really fast paced because they have so much to do, which also makes it a quick read. But it ends the day when he's finished service and they all go out to a bar. I just would have liked it to end on a more foodie note, but I don't know how that would have really worked without interrupting the whole 24-hour thing. But the food descriptions and things were so nice, and then they finished service and the book kind of leaves them there. I just would have liked it to end on a more food note, but it's a good read, a quick read, and one I would definitely recommend. I think people sometimes underestimate the stress of being in a kitchen, and that one really highlights it, but it also talks about how much pride they have and how much they do actually love their jobs as well. I've got a couple of other non-fiction shares, but these aren't food related. The first was How Not to Be a Boy by Robert Webb. This was a nice read, but I know Robert Webb. Well, I don't actually know Robert Webb, but I'm familiar with him from the TV show Peep Show, which is a comedy, and he does a lot of comedic roles, and I was expecting that would be what the book was about, and it was funny. It had funny parts to it, but it was actually more serious than I was expecting, and it's about how he found it growing up and the societal pressures on boys to not show their emotions, to have the stiff upper lip and be very buttoned up and not express themselves. And he had quite a difficult childhood, and he goes through depression, and it's about how he learns as he gets older to open up to people and let people know what's going on. You think it's going to be like a comedic coming of age, but it's deeper than that, and I was surprised, but I really enjoyed it. I would say I'm probably not the target audience for it, but I think it would be really helpful for young boys, teen boys, young men to read it, and just that kind of to let them know they're not alone, and you don't have to conform to the, you can talk about things, you don't have to keep things buttoned in. It talks about suicide, it talks about how high the suicide rate is in young men, and it's a good gateway into talking about those things. On the flip side of that, I also read the other guy from Peep Show, David Mitchell, his book, which was Backstory. That was more light and frothy, really enjoyable read though. It's about, more focuses on his career. It's kind of autobiographical, but there's not a lot of scintillating relationship gossip or anything like that, which I think it has been criticised for. I can understand why you'd want to keep those things personal, but he talks about his career and how he really wanted to be a comedian, and everything that he did to get there, that he didn't have overnight success. It's also really well written, and both of them write together for TV shows, but I would really like to see a novel from them. I think they could, they write very well together for TV, for stage, they do radio. I don't know if there's been a novel, not that I'm aware of, and I would really like to see something from them together because their characters are great. The last book that I read was a bit of a change of pace. It was Option B by Sheryl Sandberg, and she writes about losing her husband. He died very suddenly, and it's her process of dealing with the grief and how she does it, how she gets from not being able to function at all to being able to go out and have some semblance of balance back in her life. I wouldn't say getting over it, but just working through it. And I guess it's kind of a self-help manual for people in a similar position. It's written in part with her grief counsellor, and they kind of take a chapter each, but it's all written in Sheryl's voice. So in his chapters, he comes in with some anecdotes of people who have had great tragedies and how they've worked through them, how they've overcome them, and reminding her that there's, even though things seem so bad, there's always someone in a worse position. It's a tough read. Of course it is a sad story. It's been somewhat criticised because she's in a very fortunate position where she does have a lot of money and she can fly in a grief counsellor, and she's works right up at the top of Facebook, so she's able to implement changes to her company's grief policy, which she doesn't think is adequate. And I can understand why that's not relatable to most people. Most people aren't in that position. Something that she got a lot of criticism for in her earlier book, which is Lean In, and it's about leaning fully into your career, especially as a woman, even if you've got children at home. She got a lot of criticism for that, for not considering single parents, and she addresses that in this book, which is nice. Maybe she acknowledges that she's in a fortunate position, that her becoming a widow doesn't mean that they will lose their family home. The children can still go to the same school that they've gone to. But I just don't know how accessible it would be for other people going through a similar thing. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I enjoyed it, and I thought, enjoy probably isn't the right word. It was very harrowing, but I do think there's useful information in it for people who are suffering, and the take-home messages basically live for today, because you don't know how many days you've got, and it's nice to have that reminder. It's one that's talked about a lot, so that's why I wanted to read it. It's probably not my usual read, I don't think. Next month I'm going to stay back on the Foodie book club theme, and the main book that I'm going to be reading and reviewing next month is this one, which is How to Eat Better by James Wong. I've had this for a while and haven't cracked into it yet. So it's a mix of recipes and science, and about what we should be eating. So that was one that I generally like James Wong's books, so that was one that I wanted to get into. And if you want to read along, we'll talk about it again next month. If you have any other non-fiction reads that you would like to recommend, please do leave that in the comments below. I challenged myself this year to read 52 books for my Goodreads challenge, and I'm doing quite well with it. I think I'm about 8 away, so it's looking like I will do it. So I want to finish with something really good. So let me know your recommendations. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye bye.